It is that time of the year to give out our predictions for the next Forbidden slash Limited list. And for this ban list, I want it to be as sensible as possible, at least from the Konami perspective of what they should hit on this next ban list. So let's just jump straight into it for the first ban. And it's a ban that I think is likely to happen, but there could be other bans that they could do with this card. But Beatrice, Lady of Eternal, this card has been on people's prediction list for pretty much years, and it's for the simple reason that it's basically Lovable Chain 2.0, and yeah, it's just a very solid card. It could send Snow before it was banned, it could send Scythe, it could send a tier limit name. It's just so versatile in what it could send. It can even send a spell card, like if you need like a Soliak in the graveyard to trigger it, to add like a Havanus for next turn or whatever. Or you could send a, Medora, Keldo, a Kelbag, or Guido. You could send all of these names. You could send like a Orcus back in like 2019. Like, it just has so much utility that I feel like Beatrice should finally be banned, especially with the introduction of the Bestials in the format. It's just way too powerful. So for the next ban, a lot of people think that Kit Kalos should be banned, but I think this makes a little bit more sense when you really think about it, and that is the Tearlament Merly. So there's two reasons why Tearlament Merly ban makes a lot of sense, at least from the Konami perspective. One, Tearlament Merly is a level 2, so it works with Sprint, it works with Elf, and kind of like similarly it works with Dark, because it could go Dark into, Sprint into Elf, basically like that. But yeah, basically it shuts out the level 2 access, at least for the most part. You could probably splash like Sprite cards in your Tearlament deck now, but it becomes a lot less likely because of the Merly ban. And two, banning a Tearlament fusion means that they only have 2 fusions per turn instead of 3. The thing about Tearlaments is that you can bait out pretty much 2 Bestials, but get that third fusion in, and then go for Kit Kalos or go for any of these good fusion monsters. So that's why something like Merly ban makes a lot of sense. So it makes it a lot easier to interrupt it with like DD Crow, obviously the Bestials, Skullmeister, etc, etc. It just makes it a lot easier to stop this deck without necessarily killing the deck. I feel like Kit Kalos ban, if they do hit like a lot of these other cards in the Tearlament deck, basically kills out the deck, and I don't think Konami would like to do that, even though like the player base would probably love that Tearlaments get killed because they don't like this deck. But I think that overall this hit just seems a lot, more likely. For the next ban, this is like on everybody's ban list. Bear Statue of the Stormwinds. This card is used in Fluendaries. It's used in Castira now. It's been used in Bird Up previously. Just get this card out of the game. It's been used in too many strategies, and just slapping this on top of a insane board is just too crazy. So moving this out of the format is definitely a good change. And then the last ban, because we don't ban Kit Kalos, it just makes sense to hit Instant Fusion. It's just so weird to like people predict something like Instant Fusion is going to get banned, and then they have Kit Kalos banned on the same ban list. It just doesn't make sense. Like, why even ban Instant Fusion? I get that Instant Fusion is a generically good card, but it's only really super insane in something like Tearlaments. I mean, we did see it in stuff like Prank Kids, but this card is eons better in something like Tearlaments, because Kit Kalos is just insane. And seeing this ban, definitely a good change. So there's already 3 really impactful bans, and I feel like that's the problem with a lot of people's predictions. Like, Kit Kalos ban is fine, I guess, but if you're not hitting like these other cards that are very important, it just doesn't really make sense, which is why I'm going to be limiting a bunch of Tearlament cards. Starting off with the first card, Tearlament Rhinoheart. Now, I was thinking about if they banned Havanus or Sharon or the field spell, but I'll get to those in a bit. But I feel like Rhino makes more sense because it shuts out the normal summons, and especially because of Merly ban, they now have to play stuff like Diviner to be more consistent. And Diviner and Rhino, they lose out to a hand trap so much more likely. They lose to a Bestial, they lose to an Imperm, a Veiler. Like, it's a lot more fragile when you limit stuff like Rhino, and they have to play stuff like Diviner. So Rhino limit definitely makes more sense than stuff like Havinus, because then you're kind of like killing the deck, because now they only have, like, if you limit Havinus for an example, they only have 3 Sharon, 1 Havinus. So that's like, you banish the 1 Havinus, now they only have 1 like play. And that just basically kills the deck. So I think Rhino makes more sense than that. And it's something like the field spell, I don't think the field spell is going to get hit because it's a secret rare. They're not going to ban a secret rare or limit a secret rare. It just doesn't make sense. The last time they like limited a secret rare before reprinting it was something like Ibli. And that just rarely ever happens. So it's not impossible, but I think that Konami is just not going to hit a secret rare 3 of that's the most expensive card in the set. It's just not happening. That's the same reason why they're probably not going to hit something like Sprite Blue or, you know, all these other secret rare stuff. Like, they're just not hitting it. The next limits are going to be 4 cards that I think is just super obvious, and I don't know why people think that hitting one over the other just makes sense. They're all 4 of them are just broken, like, to another degree, and that is Keldo, Medora, Yugioh, Kelbeck. Yeah, all 4 of these cards they're not equal in power level, but like on the tier list of like cards, this is what made tier limits tier 0. And if there's no reason to like limit one but not the other. It's like the Dragon Rulers. The Dragon Rulers were not equally powerful, but like they're on a scale from like different cards, like a Sprite card or a branded card. It is on a whole nother tier. There is no reason not to limit all 4 of these cards or ban all 4 of these cards. There's no reason for Kelda to go to 1 and that's it, or Medora to go to 1 and that's it, or Yugioh and Kelbeck get limited but not the Shufflers. It just does not make sense because all 4 of them are pretty much on the same tier. Yeah, Keldo is better, Kelbeck is better, but all 4 of these cards is what made tier limits broken. And as we've seen in Dragon Ruler format, they banned all 4 of the baby Dragon Rulers. And then they limited all 4 of the Dragon Rulers. And then eventually they banned all 4 of the Dragon Rulers after the Galaxy Eyes Dark Matter Dragon or whatever it's called. This is more likely to happen than them just limiting Keldo or limiting Medora. It just doesn't make sense to just limit one or the other. It's super comparable to something like Dragon Rulers, and I just don't see why you would ever go with that other option. Now, the next hit is going to be a small Sprite hit. I don't think Sprite is going to get hit that much. I mean, maybe Starter could get hit, maybe Jet could get hit, but I think something that's more likely to happen is Nimble Beaver to 1. Nimble Beaver to 1 seems like an interesting hit because now it makes the sprint line a lot worse. Now you have to play more Angulars, or you have to play other Nimble cards at level 2. The Sunfish, I think, is level 2 as well. But now that you have 1 Beaver, that's 2 less normal summons. Now you have to play like Diva, which is a lot worse than having something like Beaver because it only summons from the deck. And now they have to play something like Ipra, which is not really another extender. It's just like a draw 1, which is like fine. But with Nimble Beaver being out of the equation, at least, you know, as like a 3 of, it makes the Sprite deck a lot worse without like limiting a starter, limiting a Jet, like banning an Elf. Elf is just way too much, I feel like, at this point. And banning like a gigantic Sprite, like, it's just way too early. So Like, hitting Nimble Beaver makes it to where people have to change up the sprite deck significantly. They have to really rethink about what they want to do with the sprite deck, especially with something like Sprite Spin, because Sprite Spin is a very strong card, but without the 3 Nimble Beaver, it just makes it a lot worse. The next limited is a card that was banned before, and it's pretty obvious that it's going to come back because it's errata, and that's Ancient Fairy Dragon. It got errated, of course, in the OCG, and we'll eventually get it here in the TCG. So Ancient Fairy Dragon is obviously going to get banned, or going to get unbanned, if not on this list, the next list. But I'm pretty sure it's going to get unbanned on this list. And then for the last card that is limited, it is another card that has been banned for a long time. But I feel like because we got Sky Strikers back, because we got something like Salomon Great, Mirage Salio back, come on, Heart Pourer. Like, please, Konami. Like, this deck is bad. First, there's just 10 billion reasons why Orcus is just bad. Like, first of all, this deck is power creeps out of the wazoo. Second of all, there's Bestials. Third of all, there's still shufflers in the game. So if you play against tier elements and they have a shuffler, like GG, bro. Like you're not playing. Like they just put back your Heart Pourer or your Nightmare or whatever. So Orcus is just in a super bad situation. Same thing with Strikers. It's just not a good deck just because stuff like Bestials exist. And the deck is still fragile even without Bestials, even without the shufflers. They're just not that great. So I feel like if there's any time to unban Heart Pourer, it's definitely now because they're just not that great. Now moving on to the semi-limits. No one really cares about the semi-limits, but I have a few interesting takes about what needs to get semi-limited. So first one is Divine Wind of Mist Valley. This card got unlimited in the OCG, so I just might as well just put it back to 3. Like, who really cares? Same thing with Jedi's Ally Birdman. Who really cares if this goes back to 2 or 3? No one's gonna do some Jink FTK with this card. It just doesn't exist, or it just lose out the hand traps, just like any other of these FTKs, like the Morphtronic FTK. We talked about that for a week, and then no one did it. For the next semi-limited, is something interesting, and I think that Miscellaneousaurus can definitely come back to at least 2 to test the waters with this card, because first of all, Dinosaurs is not that great, especially against something like a Shizu. They lose out to stuff like Crime and not really Soliac, but definitely Crime and the Shufflers. Like, I don't think the Bestials hurt as much, but yeah, this deck is just not as great as people thought it was. The power level of a lot of decks were a lot lower back in stuff like 2021 when this deck was like really at its peak, and Dragon Link was the only deck to compete against it. And second of all, Mystic Mine is now banned, and that is like the second best card, or even the best card in Dinosaurs. And now that it's banned, like, Dinos don't really have much going for it. It could set up a decent turn 1 board, but going second, what do they have? Like Thrusting, I guess, or the new Triple Tactics card, where they have Talents. Like, that's great and all, but every other deck has that. So I think Miscellaneousaurus to 2 is just fine. It just could come back. Another interesting semi-limited is 1-for-1. I feel like a lot of decks that rely on level 1 monsters are not really great, and because this card is a collector's rare, it could definitely come back to 2. I don't really see this as a problem, especially if they unlimited E-Telly, or they have like Sprite Starter in the format, or Quick Launch. Like, all of these like E-Tellys are in the game, and they're pretty much non-existent. They don't really exist besides like Starter. So why not just give a boost to all these level 1 decks? It just doesn't make sense. Another card, Mind Control. They put Change of Heart to 1, and it did pretty much nothing. I feel like Mind Control just makes sense. It probably should go to 3, obviously. They could probably unban Snatch Steal, but I think they're just too hesitant on unbanning equips, because there's so many equip decks. They have the Makinkos, you have the Infernoble deck, even like any warrior deck in general is just very scary to have. And stuff like Premature Burial is something like having more good equips is like kind of scary for that. Another semi-limit, and the last semi-limit is Sky Striker Mobilized Engage. I know like everybody's going like, oh my god, Sai, why are you semi-limiting? I don't want this to happen, but with the recent semi-limit of Kagari in the OCG, Master Duel has Kagari now at 2, it just seems very likely that Striker gets more support, even outside of like the Mama support that they got with the linkage and the hamper card, or yeah, like Sky Striker has gotten so much support not only from the ban list but from support that I feel like this is likely to happen, even though I don't want it to happen. And then for the 3 unlimiteds, Judgment, who really cares about that? Recital Starling, this went to 2, and now it can go to 3. It doesn't really change much. And Pot of Desires. I think that Pot of Desires might go to 2, or it might go to 3. But Konami just kind of hates draw spells, but weirdly, they kind of went back on hitting Pot of Desires, because it was at 1, and went to 2. I just don't know what they're likely to do with Pot of Desires, and because of Pot of Desires like out of the format, you might as well just put Pot of Desires 3. It makes Sword Soul a lot better because you have 3 Desires. It makes like all these other decks like Virtual Worlds and etc kind of compete with stuff like Tier Limits and Sprites and, you know, Fluunderies and Kashtira. So I think that it just makes a lot of sense. So that is it for my predictions. Let me know what you guys think. You think that, you know, Kikala should be banned? You think that, you know, having this limited just makes more sense? Let me know what you think about the Ishizu cards, because I feel very strongly about the Ishizu cards, all of them going to 1 or all of them getting banned. If you don't do this, it just doesn't make sense to hit just one over the other. I am very strong in that. So if you disagree with this, please leave it in the comment section below. I would like to argue with you in the comments. But yeah, that's basically it. Like, all of these other hits just kind of make sense, or if they don't happen, it just doesn't matter. Like Nimble Beaver to like 1 doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Like, Sprite is still going to be really good. But let me know what you guys think. I am out. Peace.